Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being.
Welcome to the 252nd episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. And this month's theme is all about pushback. But before we kick off, have you watched my TEDx talk? It's about the connection between culture, race, and mental health in the workplace. It's something you can watch in your break as it's just 12 minutes long. The link is in the show note, but I'll also give it to you here. It is bit.ly/TEDx Wolves, WOLVESLO. And I really hope you enjoy it because it was a labor of love. And if you did enjoy it, please leave me a positive comment on YouTube, share, and like. Also, don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Right, so if you listened last week, I talked about the pushback knee-jerk response of we can't afford it when it comes to anything to do with equality, diversity, inclusion, and mental well-being, coaching, training, consultancy, keynote speaking, and this whole idea of cost versus value. And this week, I wanted to focus on pushback around how so many of us have to constantly correct pronunciation and spellings of our names. And my inspiration for this, and I've been thinking about it for a while, is my own experience and my colleagues' experiences, but also the brilliant Unbu and the way he's put it together at Unbu London, spelled ANPU London. So name pronunciation is, it's about being able to pronounce someone's name, first and last name, whichever names they have that they're out in the public that people are to use, as they would prefer it to be pronounced in its original intended form. This means you don't deviate or shorten names for people. Now, if you really care about inclusion, race equity, cultural awareness, this is a non-negotiable. A person's name means a lot to them. It's part of their identity. And remember that most people from global majority backgrounds, and indeed all backgrounds, names have a significance, whether you know that or not. But often people are named after people in their families, regardless of culture. But if we think about Black global majority diaspora communities, naming is very, very, very important. And there is usually a naming ceremony in many of our collective cultures, a few days or weeks after you're born. And you're often given a name that runs through your family, that has significance, that means something important. It might be tied to the time of day you were born, the week that you were born, in the day that you were born on. Names have particular meaning. So many people know the meaning of their name and the weight it carries within their culture, community, and their own personal consciousness. And the Race Equality campaign, My Name Is, highlighted that 73% of respondents, when they did this survey from more than 100 organizations, said that they had their names mispronounced, and it led them to feeling not important, disrespected, and that they didn't belong. And always, as I always do, I've had a little route round some really great resources, and one is an article in the Harvard Business Review by Associate Professor of Responsible Business Practices at Oregon State University, Rajat Banwar, and he says, I'm quoting this from the article, and I've put the link in the show notes, but when people feel that they need to compromise their identities for social acceptance, their emotional well-being inevitably suffers. Simply put, anglicizing names undermines inclusivity. When you refuse to make an effort to pronounce someone's name correctly, it suggests that you're choosing your own linguistic comfort. And for me, that's so the point, isn't it? Your own linguistic comfort over their identity. It shows that their identity is not important enough to expel the energy that makes your behavior a microaggression. And that's really important because I think particularly in the UK, white British communities, it's a joke, isn't it? Brits abroad, go abroad. There isn't a culture of learning many languages. Of course, there are people who do speak languages, but if you think about diaspora communities, most of us can speak 2 or 3 languages. That doesn't mean we can pronounce everyone's name perfectly, but potentially what it does is because we've experienced that discomfort of having our names mispronounced and our tongue is a bit more malleable, we're happy to give it a go and say to someone, how do you pronounce it? Well, I definitely am. Now, again, going back to Unbu London, he talks about this heavy history. So he has this really great post, and actually this is what went viral about pronouncing names. And he talks about the fact that colonization, and he's done his own research here, and quotes, I'm going to quote what he's quoted, the research behind it. So Bresinger in 1992, colonization gave rise to a language hierarchy in which the language of the colonizer was inscribed as the most prestigious language. And then we've got Eames, EAMES in 2019, naming practices by European colonizers served to inject a sense of shame and legacy of inferiority. Of the world's estimated 7,500 languages, over half will be extinct by the year 2050 owing to imperialism. And then finally, Fitzpatrick in 2020 12, European colonizers defiled African names to erase African identity. And we're talking about all the colonized countries in Africa. So continental, referring to Africa as a continent here. So names not only aid in the construction of identity, but also concretize a people's collective memory by recording the circumstance of their experiences. Thus, to obliterate African collective memories and identities, the colonizers assigned new names to the Africans or even left them nameless as a way of subjugating and committing them to perpetual servitude. So there's always a link to this horrific history. And, think about many generations of African American peoples, they lost their original language when they were enslaved and brought over. And that's, it's horrific, but you think, that is a very, this is why names are so important. We've also seen a lot of reclaiming of names in the sort of celebrity sphere, so Thandi Newton to Thandiwe Newton, and Shappi Khorsandi back to her full name, Shaparak. And also included a link in the show notes from an article that she wrote herself in The Independent about why she's done this. And I want to read some of the paragraphs from that article because I think they're so powerful. So she says, this is Shaparak Khorsandi, "I'm only now scratching the surface of how often in my life I've internalized bigotry and tried to bend in a direction which would make my foreignness more comfortable for other people. Changing my name was part of that." And that really is the key, isn't it? It's this comfortableness. Shaparak is a very fancy poetic word in Persian for butterfly. My brother is called Peyvand, another Persian name, unusual even in Iran. It means fusion and is mostly used in the context of love. As children, when Iranians heard our name, they often exclaimed, "Oh, what beautiful names." But after our move as children to England, these beautiful names quickly became Shakatak and Pavement, or something ruder in the playground and beyond. Every time a new teacher read the register, they would trill Sarah, Lucy, Emily, and then stall at my name, Shaparoff, and my face would burn and the other children would titter at my silly name, and I grew to hate every moment when I had to introduce myself to people and say my name out loud. So I don't think there's any better way I can sort of summarize a lot of the experiences. And, so many of us have had this experience and we continue to do so. Misspelling and mispronunciation all the time. So actually, not so much mispronunciation. People do tend to pronounce Layla correctly, not my surname and not my middle name, but I do have to constantly correct spelling, and it's really exhausting, and it's 5 letters. Now, I appreciate that there are about 7 or 8 different ways to spell Layla because it is an Arabic name, and transliteration will always mean that transliterating into non-Arabic, so English alphabet, will cause differences. And of course, people have the right to spell their name in different ways. And my name is spelled the Turkish way, even though I'm not Turkish, because I'm named after a Turkish journalist. But the constant correction. And people will see my email and they'll still spell it Layla, Leila. Now, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it does annoy me. And I have to do this thing where I say PS, or a gentle reminder that my name is spelled Leila, not brackets how you've spelt it. And it's like, oh God, sorry. And people get really awkward about it. But I try and really make an effort to spell people's name correctly. So, Erin's with 2 R's or 2 N's, Darren's with an A instead of an E. So these things are important, and I think they're important across the board, but people get very antsy. And when I was growing up in the US, I was called Lila a lot. So like I said, in the UK, not so much, but Lila, and my name isn't Lila. And people will say, oh, but that is what you're called. And I would be like, no, it's not, it's Layla. And actually, if we think about people who's Hindi speakers, they will, and this isn't wrong, actually, this is just another pronunciation, and I don't mind this, but they will pronounce my name Lehla because that is more probably correct as to how you meant to say it, as opposed to a flat Layla. But so it's interesting. But it's interesting to be able to have those discussions as opposed to people be calling me Lila, which is incorrect. Also, you might have seen there's some billboard campaigns recently that have gone up around the globe, but I've seen photos of them. I've not seen them in real life, but it says, like, for anyone whose name came up with a red line under it, you are real, or I can't remember the strap line. But again, how we always have red lines under our names on various software packages. It's a spelling error, and our names are not spelling errors. So how, again, that perception and who decides what's correctly spelt is encoded into this kind of mainstream culture. Always traditional British white heritage names being used in case studies, examples, websites, etc. And the wonderful comedian Suk Ojla, she talks about this. My name's Sukhvinder, and I'm it's short for "you'll never find my name on a keyring in a gift shop." And it's so true. We don't find our names. And that was the other thing when when I did go to Istanbul, it was brilliant. I got to buy a necklace with my name on it. Yeah, I was like loving every minute of it because my name is everywhere there. Things like, oh yeah, can I shorten it? Bad guesses, not asking. Oh, isn't that a mouthful? So I have someone that I know from Twitter, and she's Sri Lankan, and it's horrendous. She got someone had said to her, oh yeah, can I just, oh, your name, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? She was like, no, it's my name. And so these things are happening all the time, and it's infuriating. And if you also want to check out my episode with Masuda Snaith, so she talks about a writer's journey, and that is episode number 51, A Writer's Journey with Masuda Snaith. She had a horrible incident where she was part of a panel as a writer, and someone said to her, all right, okay, so your name, so your first name, how do you pronounce that? Oh, and your second name, that's normal, because she has a more British surname. She's got a married name. So these things happen all the time. And the other example I wanted to share was, I can't remember the name of the Tory MP. She went on Amal Rajan's radio show, horrendous, at Radio 4, and he said her name, introduced her, and she went, oh, yeah, thank you. She didn't even try. She didn't even make a mistake. She didn't go Amol, nothing. She went, thank you. And he voices over and he says, and that's not my name. But yeah, it's truly appalling. And I think that often when people are corrected or, hey, wait a second, that's not my name, tears and anger and perceived confrontation. So when there is a right to have your name pronounced the way you want to, there's this pushback around it and this discomfort. Again, I think it comes back to that comfort. People used to being made to feel comfort, the linguistic comfort and the pushback around that. And in May 2023, you might have seen the wonderful Dr. Shola Mos Shogbamimu when she gained widespread praise for the way she dealt with the situation on Jeremy Vine's Extra when the host struggled to say her name correctly, and rightly so. And she said, I'm not going any further. You will say my name and you will say my name properly. And this woman completely spun out. So I really hope you're enjoying the content of the podcast and you want to keep up to date. If so, then why not join my newsletter? When you join, you'll receive a copy of my white paper on inclusive language and mental health. And that link is bit.ly/ILMHCK. Right. So I've said all these things, and maybe you're thinking, well, this is first nature to me. I know exactly what to do, but you might be thinking, I haven't got a clue what to do. So I just want to list a couple of things here, because if we're thinking about pushback and moving on from that, what you can do first and foremost is to not be defensive, because we can't all know every language. I would love to. I wish I could. I wish I did. And you might be monolingual. And that's okay. So your tongue might not move, or, your mouth might move in a particular direction, but it's about not being defensive, taking a deep breath and recognizing this. And then the second thing, it's not rocket science, but it's to say, can I check how to pronounce your name? And actually, I do this all the time. I do it on Zoom calls. I do it when I meet people. I will say, welcome, as people come into the Zoom space or, online space. I'll say, welcome, so-and-so. Can I check, have I pronounced your name correctly? And they can either, I said, you can type it in the chat, or they'll say yes, no, or yeah, you did okay. And then I will write it down phonetically for me, not to show anyone, so I don't make a mistake. And if I get stuck, I've got that there next to me and I write it down. If it's face to face, I will say to someone, thank you so much. I'm just going to write your name down phonetically for me so I don't get it wrong. But if I do get it wrong, which I hope not to do, please correct me. And that's my example. If it's a situation where that someone's done it wrong, you call it out privately and say to someone, actually, that's not how they pronounce their name. This is how you do it. And it's really important that we do this correctly. It might also be in the work environment, it might be in a personal environment, but that's super, super important. A gentle reminder. So, gentle reminder, my name is spelt. If you have to do that, my name is pronounced. And if you feel able to, and this is for the people whose names are mispronounced, is to say, can I help you pronounce my name? Or I can help you pronounce my name. That will really depend on how you feel, the relationship and the context. But if you want to know more about cultural awareness, how I could help you with keynotes, workshops, or team coaching sessions, please do get in touch. It's Layla, Leyla, at Diverse Minds, Diverse minds.co.uk. So remember, pronouncing people's names really matters. It's part of the link to culture, identity, and heritage. Remember, there is a deep cultural heritage around naming for everyone, and it's easy yet super impactful thing to do for you and your organization. If it goes wrong, try not to react negatively. Take a deep breath to get it right. And how would you feel if it was you? Have a really good think about that. And I really hope you've enjoyed the show and this series on why the pushback, or what's with the pushback. If you have, please write me a review on Spotify, Apple Apple or wherever you get your podcast from. And as always, I'd love to hear from you as listeners. To make this super easy, I've created a place online where you can leave me a voice note anonymously, or you can leave your name if you want to, called SpeakPipe. And the link is in the show notes, but I'll give it to you here. It is bit.ly/SPKPDMP. And the resources are UMBU London's Linktree, so ANPU London, at ANPU London, Inclusive Employers Name Pronunciation article, the Harvard Business Review from Rajat Panwar, and of course Shaparak Khosandi's independent piece where she talks about why she's gone back to her, or why she's chosen to use her full name. So everyone, I hope you will join me next month, where we'll be starting a new series, and I really look forward to it. And of course, don't forget, we've also got South Asian Heritage Month coming up in the middle of July, from the 17th of July. So if you need someone for your keynotes and talks, do get in touch with me. Until then, everyone, take care, and hopefully catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.